The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 is one of the greatest aviation mysteries of modern times, a story that continues to haunt families, experts, and the world at large. On March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777-200ER carrying 239 people took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia, bound for Beijing, China. The flight seemed routine at first, with clear skies and experienced pilots in the cockpit. But within less than an hour, MH370 vanished from radar screens, sparking the largest and most expensive search operation in aviation history. To this day, despite billions spent, advanced technology deployed, and endless theories explored, the aircraft itself has never been found in full, leaving behind only fragments and an endless cloud of speculation. The story begins at 12:41 a.m. local time when MH370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a 53-year-old seasoned pilot with more than 18,000 flight hours, was in command. His co-pilot, 27-year-old First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, was flying one of his final training flights before being fully certified. For the first 40 minutes, communication between the cockpit and Malaysian air traffic control was smooth. At 1:19 a.m., the last known voice transmission came from the cockpit. "Good night, Malaysian 370. That was the last time the world would ever hear from MH370. 2 minutes later at 1:21 a.m., the plane's transponder, the device that communicates with air traffic control, was switched off. Suddenly, MH370 disappeared from civilian radar. At the same time, the aircraft also stopped sending its automatic ACARS signals, a system that reports the plane's mechanical health. Both these systems being cut within minutes raised immediate suspicion. Was it a technical failure or a deliberate act? What the public didn't know until much later was that the plane was still being tracked, not by traditional radar, but by satellites. Inmarsat, a British satellite communications company, later revealed that MH370 continued to send handshake signals for nearly 7 hours after it disappeared from radar. These signals showed that the plane had not crashed immediately, but instead continued flying, turning sharply west, crossing the Malay Peninsula, and then heading out over the Indian Ocean. By 8:19 a.m., the final signal, or ping, was recorded. By that time, the aircraft was most likely out of fuel, somewhere over the vast southern Indian Ocean. This revelation changed everything. Instead of searching in the South China Sea where the plane was last seen, investigators now had to focus on a massive, desolate stretch of ocean west of Australia. The search area spanned more than 120,000 square kilometers, roughly the size of Greece, making it one of the most difficult hunts in human history. Over the next 3 years, ships equipped with sonar and underwater drones scoured the seafloor. Despite covering an immense area, the wreckage was never found. But starting in 2015, debris began washing up on beaches thousands of miles away. The first confirmed piece was discovered on Réunion Island, east of Madagascar, a wing flaperon positively identified as belonging to MH370. Later, more fragments appeared in Mozambique, Tanzania, Mauritius, and South Africa. These pieces proved the plane had indeed ended up in the southern Indian Ocean. But, they were not enough to solve the mystery of what happened during those final hours. Theories quickly began to multiply. Some suggested catastrophic mechanical failure, maybe a sudden decompression, an electrical fire, or even an engine shutdown that left the crew incapacitated. But, critics of this theory argue that if it were a simple accident, the pilots would have had time to send out a distress call. Instead, both communication systems were disabled, which is something more consistent with deliberate human action. This led to the darker possibility of hijacking or pilot involvement. Some investigators considered the idea that Captain Zahari, a respected but private man, may have deliberately diverted the plane in an act of suicide. A flight simulator found in his home months later contained a route into the southern Indian Ocean similar to MH370's path. though experts remain divided over whether this was relevant or just coincidence. Zahari's family and colleagues firmly deny he would ever endanger his passengers, and there is no direct evidence to prove the theory. Others floated the possibility of hijacking, terrorists, or rogue actors seizing the plane, but there was no distress signal, no demands, and no groups ever claimed responsibility. Moreover, the passengers were carefully screened, and none had ties to known extremist groups. Another theory points to military involvement. MH370 crossed near Malaysian and Thai airspace, areas monitored by radar, yet no military jets intercepted the unidentified craft. Some suggest that governments know more than they are admitting, possibly covering up mistakes or withheld data. In particular, suspicions linger around the Malaysian government's slow and inconsistent responses in the days following the disappearance. At one point, officials claimed the plane turned back west, even though just hours before they had denied it. But perhaps, the most convincing evidence remains the Inmarsat satellite data. Experts used Doppler shifts, which is the change in frequency as the plane moved relative to the satellite, to estimate MH370's path. By analyzing these arcs, they concluded the aircraft's final resting place must be deep in the southern Indian Ocean, which is, honestly, one of the most remote and inhospitable regions on Earth. The problem? That part of the ocean is, about 4 miles deep, with rugged underwater terrain that makes wreckage detection nearly impossible. As years passed, frustration grew. In 2017, the official search was suspended after covering 120,000 square kilometers without results. Families of victims, still desperate for closure, pushed for continued efforts. In 2018, a private company, Ocean Infinity, resumed the search using advanced underwater drones. But after scouring an additional 25,000 square kilometers, they too came up empty. To this day, MH370 remains missing. The confirmed debris proves it crashed in the Indian Ocean, but the exact location and cause are still unknown. For the families of the 239 victims, the lack of closure is unbearable. They continue to demand new searches and greater transparency, arguing that someone, somewhere, must know more. What makes MH370 so haunting is not just the tragedy itself, but the unsettling reality that in an age of satellites, GPS, and global communication, a modern aircraft can still vanish without a trace. It really challenges our faith in technology and raises, some uncomfortable questions about airline safety, government accountability, and the limits of human knowledge. The disappearance of MH370 has inspired, countless books, documentaries, and even fictional dramas, but the real story remains unsolved. Experts believe that only when the main wreckage and the plane's black boxes are recovered will we finally know what happened. Those black boxes, which contain flight data and cockpit voice recordings, could reveal whether MH370's fate was mechanical failure, hijacking, pilot action, or, something else entirely. Until then, Flight MH370 remains aviation's greatest mystery, a ghost flight that slipped into the ocean's depths, leaving behind shattered families, unanswered questions, and a lingering reminder that even in the 21st century, the world still holds secrets too vast for us to fully comprehend. The story of MH370 is not just about an airplane, it's about human loss, the search for truth, and, the limits of certainty in a complex world. It forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes, even with our greatest tools and technologies, answers remain out of reach. And that is why the mystery of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 continues to haunt the world more than a decade later. So what do you think? Was MH370 a tragic accident, a deliberate act, or maybe something even stranger? The debate rages on, and until the wreckage is found, the haunting silence of that final goodnight will continue to echo across history. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more deep dives into the world's greatest mysteries.